The opinions you hear on Your Mountain from individual hosts or guests do not necessarily represent those of Your Mountain, our sponsors, or other entities we're affiliated with professionally or otherwise. You've waited long enough. Go listen to the show.
There are millions of acres of opportunity out there. They belong to you. Every day, decisions are being made that affect your land, your water, your wildlife. You should know about them. This is Your Mountain. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Your Mountain podcast. I'm your host, David Wilms. Nephi Cole is sitting across the screen, co-hosting this as always. Nephi, it's late and I'm tired.
Well, you should be tired. You're old.
You're older than I am.
I know, but
you just don't.
I drink more
fatigue.
caffeine than you do.
That's debatable. We just drink it in different ways.
Look at this. Pine Top Soda Shop. It's delicious. If you haven't got one near you, which you don't because there's only one, then I'm real sorry.
Yeah, I don't have one near me.
Delicious. You know what this drink is called? It's called a campfire. Because I can't be with one right now, so I'm just going to drink one.
Yeah.
That's how manly I am. That's how much I love campfires.
Can you even have a campfire where you are right now?
I don't know what's stopping me. The law? Give me a break, Dave.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the law is stopping me. I don't think I can have campfires where I am.
Pretty dry, isn't it, in the world?
It has been. I don't want anybody to think that us saying that means we're going to talk about Colorado River policy or anything, because we're not doing that. But I am going to lead off by reminding people that we have a new email address. People have actually been using it.
Oh,
and
excellent.
Yeah. yourmountainpodcast@gmail.com. Feel free to use it. I've actually been pretty responsive. You'd be surprised, Nephi. I've been responding like a madman. As it turns out, this account is way easier to use than the one we were using before. I don't have to
Gmail?
I don't have to do 5 steps to get into it. And it just makes it a lot easier. So I'll probably be more responsive.
What they're doing, set it up.
Yeah. So I'll be more responsive if you email us at yourmountainpodcast@gmail.com. Again, we'll still answering emails on the old account for the next month or so, but we're going to pivot away from that and do this one full time.
So what emails did we get? So you said somebody's using it. What did we find out?
Well, I mean, Mr. Ryan Bronson sent us a test email. I think he just wanted proof that it worked. But mostly just people, you'll like this. Mostly just people saying, hey, appreciate the podcast. Thanks for keeping it up. And then a couple of topic ideas.
I feel like Ryan's he wants our podcast, and this is his foot in the door to take it. Do you think there's a chance of that? Like this is really kind of a hostile takeover. Like he's just feeling us out through the email process, and pretty soon, because there was a feud. Most people don't know this, but Mr. Bronson, Ryan Bronson, if you will, used to have a podcast. In fact, he had the podcast called On Gravel with Eric Dinger
and Andrew McKean.
And the podcast, they wanted a podcast war with us, and we destroyed them. We literally destroyed their podcast. Their podcast no longer exists because they messed with the wrong podcast.
I'm going to be fair. You know what actually destroyed their podcast?
Dave, don't go. We don't need revisionist history here.
We don't need to actually tell the truth. I'm an honorable gentleman, and for purposes of Ryan, and he'll know if he's watching this, what I'm doing right now. For purposes of Ryan, I'm an honorable gentleman. And I know that it was simply because he took a new job and he wasn't able to continue the podcast with his new role.
I think that's a lack of commitment.
He should have just not taken
You and I took new jobs and we still do a podcast.
Well, that is true. We do, but we were never told not to, I don't think. I think that's the difference.
You haven't been told not to?
No, I have. You have?
No, I'm not going to ask. I mean, come on, Dave.
Why ask if you don't want the answer? You might get.
We asked once and got permission.
Yep.
So, for people that don't know, which is probably everybody, when we started this podcast, we went in we both were working for the governor of Wyoming as senior policy guys for him. And lucky for us, the governor always runs things through his chief of staff first, who's now Justice Carrie Gray of the Wyoming Supreme Court.
That's right.
And so Justice Gray,
how come everybody we know became judges, by the way?
Except us.
Except us. Anyway, go ahead.
I'm not an attorney, so that's my excuse. What's yours?
I'm a bad attorney.
So we go in to talk to the chief of staff and Justice Gray, and we were talking. We're like, yeah, we want to do a podcast. And she said, sure, what's a podcast? And just gave us the green light to do this podcast, as long as we didn't tell anybody where we worked. And so we're like, so it was just our first names, right? And we were like just doing this podcast. And years later, we went and talked to the governor after he was out of office. We told him that story, and he said, "It's a good thing that she didn't tell me, because I would have said no."
I know, he did say that. He was pretty clear about that. He almost was a little annoyed that we were doing it.
Yeah, well, he knew what one was, so.
Well, that's because he'd been on one while he was governor.
Yeah, we had him on Steve. We went on Ranella's podcast with him.
One of the early episodes of Ranella's podcast.
One of the first.
Like 20 or something like that. Or
it was
10,
really a low number.
Yeah, it was really early on.
Brownie points to whoever figures out which number podcast we were on early on and then puts it in there. And that was a funny podcast too, because it was at the governor's mansion and we picked Steve up. Do you remember like what we did is like we were angling to get a message out on the podcast, to get the governor on the podcast. And so we were stalking Steve Ranella. And we were stalking Steve Ranella because we knew that he had put in, because we of course work for the governor's office. So we were inside the Game and Fish database, and we knew that he had applied for an antelope tag in a given area. So because of that, we also knew that he drew the antelope tag he wanted for that area, and that there was some warden who was trying to help him. So first we called the warden and kicked him out of the process and like usurped. we like just stepped in front of him. We're like, hey, Steve, did you get your tag this year? And we knew we got his tag this year, right? And so then we were just like, oh, well, like coincidentally, we could help you out with some information. And so we ended up arranging to pick him up at the Denver airport. And as I recall, you and I picked him up for his podcast.
Yep.
And the funny thing about it was I went to pick you up, and it's like we matched. So I picked you up at your house, and we were like wearing like blue jeans and like almost the exact same shirt. So you went back and changed clothes.
That's exactly right.
And then we went and picked Steve up. And then my favorite part of that podcast, for anybody who listens to it, was like Steve asked me a question or us a question or something. And I talked for a second, and then I pointed directly at you to try and get you to say something. And you just kept your mouth shut for like, it was like this extended, uncomfortable pause where you just sat there, just didn't say anything.
Yeah, well, I did that. I remember at the end of that podcast, Steve kicked it over to me. He was like, well, do you have anything to add? You've been sitting there quiet this whole time. Do you have anything you want to say? Anything you want to add?
Yeah.
I'm like, why would I say anything when the boss nailed it? Like, I'm not gonna get in there and correct the governor. I'm like, he did it perfectly. I've got nothing to add.
No, that was pretty fun. But that was the start of it. That's what gave us the idea that it was possible.
Yeah. And here we are. And right around this time of year, this is sort of our anniversary of doing this, like 8-ish years now. We were much younger when we started this. I think it's pretty cool. I can't believe
it. Yeah.
I think it's pretty cool.
Nope.
We outlasted to come all the way back around. We outlasted. We're still rolling down a gravel road. We're still technically on gravel, even though that podcast.
Yeah, we defeated. What else did we defeated on gravel? I'm pretty sure. What was Ben O'Brien's podcast with Mead? We crushed that.
I don't know.
Let's see. We've defeated,
when you're not in it for the money, you can outlast everybody.
Yeah, I mean.
But maybe the thing that keeps
I hope you all appreciate it.
Yeah. Even if they don't. I appreciate it.
You know what I wonder about before we move on? The last thing I will say I wonder about is I wonder about Ben Perry.
Why?
Because
he's been here
he
since
was like
the beginning.
Our longest listener.
He's like the OG on listeners.
He used to send us we used to get so much I think he was just bored, so he would send us stuff all the time. So
I think
I just worry
maybe
about him
we've
now.
officially bored him now.
Yeah, I think maybe it's Canada. I think it's Canada's fault. Maybe they have, I'm worried. I'm worried. Let's just
But
say I haven't seen him personally in a long time. So, so I'm thinking,
well, since we're name dropping, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk, and drop another original listener, and longtime listener, Chris Tymason. I'm sure he's going to hear this, so we got to throw his name
probably
out
the
there.
first listener, one listener to it. Who else is a long time listener?
There's a lot, but now I feel like we're just
John Zinnel,
yeah,
Ronson, Dinger,
yeah, lots,
and all the rest of y'all. We'll just say that.
Yeah,
yeah,
appreciate it, and we're gonna keep riding. We're gonna make this. We took 10 minutes, and this thing probably only gonna take like 30.
I know.
You're just trying to kill time.
Gratuitous stretching of the podcast through stories that aren't really that important.
Oh man. Well, let's talk
it's
about
almost
a
like
couple
Mead
of
Eater
things.
now. We could talk about something absolutely ridiculous now if you'd like to. This has nothing to do with it. We could.
I'm going to keep us back. I'm going to keep us focused.
Okay.
Let's talk. I got two things we want to talk about. And I guess as we're talking about it, we can have tangents. I don't care. But two things we want to talk about. One of them, I'm going to timestamp this because a thing is going to happen tomorrow. And we might not get this out before this thing happens tomorrow. So we are at about 9:30 p.m. on Tuesday, June 9th. This is when we're recording Mountain Time. So that's just the timestamp because there's this thing that's going to happen tomorrow. There's a markup that's going to happen in the Senate Environment and Natural Resources Committee in Washington, D.C. on a number of bills. But one of them has got people all stirred up today. I've seen it all over social media. I've seen some stories written about it. It's really got people fired up across the conservation spectrum. So what is it? Well, here's the lowdown, I guess, like the shortish version. Senator John Barrasso, our senior senator here in Wyoming, the number 2 ranking senator in the U.S. Senate, introduced a bill, Senate Bill 140, the Wildfire Prevention Act of 2025. So he introduced this bill, and the bill is really, with that, there's a lot of stuff in it, but at the highest level, what it's meant to do is increase annual goals, or at least establish annual goals for the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management for acres to be mechanically thinned and for acres to be treated by prescribed fire. And the idea is reduce wildfire risk. There's a lot to the bill. I don't think there's a need to go into tons more detail. There's some provisions about using grazing. Yeah, there's some
components in it too.
That's right. Yep. But it's all focused on how do you reduce fuel loads and reduce fire risk on public lands. That's the way I describe it. And there's some disagreement about different provisions of it, right? But I think this is the second time he's introduced the bill, the second Congress it's been introduced. And there's been some pretty broad bipartisan support in the past for it. Because I think people realize we need more prescribed fire and we need more mechanical thinning. Like we need some active management on our forests. And I'll tangent for 1 second here because I would volunteer to take anybody out, blindfolded, of course, out to some of the places that I've hunted over the years that are impacted by, for example, pine beetle. And if you're an outdoor recreationist and you like to go hiking and you're hiking mountain trails and so forth, you're not really seeing, I hate to say it, you're not really seeing what the national forest is like. These a lot of these trails are maintained, and down trees are cut out every year, and it's nice hiking. You're going into some of these places, and I've got some photos of them. Maybe I can share them on our social media at some point. But if I ever remember how to use social media again. But there are places, like there's a place I used to elk hunt, and there was a number of years ago, I'm like, I may never go back here again, because that game, this will date us a little bit. Remember that game Pickup Sticks, where you have like that handful of plastic sticks, and you drop them, and then you're trying to pull them out of the pile. That's what the forest is like in so many places. It's like a game of pickup sticks. Like you find yourself all of a sudden 10 feet off the ground, climbing over logs, wondering how in the world can anything survive in here. And the collar data on elk and stuff shows they don't like, just like people, they don't like to use that stuff. They avoid all that really nasty, gnarly deadfall from the pine beetle. So that's just my long way of saying, like, forests need to be managed. Like, active management is a thing that our forests need. And we can disagree on how to do it, but we should all be moving in the direction to try and come up with some policies to address it, because it's pretty bad.
Yeah, the timber is going to get removed. The only question is, how is the timber going to get removed, and how do you want to see it removed? There's I'll tell a story because it's anecdotal. You can't prove that it's true, but there was a series of large forest fires in the Bighorns in the last year or the year before. I don't remember which one, but an interesting thing happened, which is that these forests, like you just burn in the mountains for 30 miles, and there was some discussion of why you didn't see forestry teams up in some of these areas that were burning, why they just basically moved back. And part of the discussion was just because, like, they didn't have the money. Nobody has the money to go in there and treat the stuff. And so management decision, this get again anecdotal, was let it burn. It's got to get cleared out somehow. And it's, it's something that we all need to kind of have as it's a reality check. The fuel load is going to go down one way or the other. And so, we always say, Mother Nature isn't necessarily, she's not a nice person. And when she takes care of it, she doesn't take care of it in necessarily the ways that you would want it to. So it's going to happen. The fuel's going to go away. The question is, do you want to see it burned, or do you want to see it harvested? And it's going to be one of the two.
Well, and there's some other factors here too, right? There's this book. I'm holding it up here. I don't know. Have you ever read this, Nephi? Wildlife in America?
I have not. And just so the public knows, when you guys see this, everything will look crystal clear. But because, Dave, we have a limited connectivity, you just look like a splotchy blob on my screen. So I can't read anything in your office.
That's right. It's funny. Anyway, the book's not funny. That's funny. There's this, I'll give credit here. I was listening to Carl Malcolm on a podcast. He's a former Forest Service employee, now works for Grouse Partnership. Anyway, I was listening to him talk about forest management and the need for active forest management in places, and he was really focusing on parts of the upper Midwest and so forth. But he was talking about things like, he was highlighting this book, and he was talking about things in this book. So this is what triggered me to go find the book. I had to buy it. Actually, I couldn't. It was really hard to find a copy. I ended up finding a copy in London or something and have it shipped. But he was talking about things like passenger pigeons, right? And how passenger pigeons, used to, all the discussions about passenger pigeons used to blacken the sky. They used to darken the sky. There were, hundreds of millions, maybe billions of passenger pigeons at some point. And through aggressive hunting, market hunting, harvest, trapping, poisoning, all the things, they became extinct in the early part of the 20th century. It was one of the very first big time species that we, in the, I don't want to say the modern era, but kind of into it. My grandfather was alive when this happened. I'll call it the modern era. Species went extinct. But the thing that was interesting about the passenger pigeon is, and I'll get this close, but I won't get this exact, and I won't do Carl justice, and I won't do this book justice. But they nest in a certain type of tree, and they effectively kill. They nest in such high concentration and density and have such disturbing activities that they effectively kill these areas where they nest. And so they're harvesting timber. They're impacting these forests, these forest ecosystems, just with their roosting and nesting, that sort of thing. When you take them out of the ecosystem, there was nothing to replace it. So you ended up with kind of these unnatural stands as a result. You didn't realize passenger pigeons were such an important component of the ecosystem and managing it. And so we've altered things in so many profound ways over the course of human history, that if we take a sit on the sideline and let nature run its course approach, it's not going to run its course the way it did hundreds of years ago. But between tribes that had, Native American tribes that had active management, forest management, and burning, but also other species, like species of wildlife that were out there and had impacts on forests as well. We've changed that dynamic so much that if we just leave things alone and don't do anything, we're where we are right now. We have some problems.
There's no such thing. That's the problem. There's no such thing as this idea that it's fictional. The Disney utopia is fictional. It's never existed. The only thing that you're changing is you're just like the only difference is when we manage. The difference is when anthropogenic management occurs, it manages to a specific goal. It's because there's a forethought of we think that we would like it to be this, or we think we would like it to be that. And even if you're saying we want to stay out of the picture, that's because you're actually making a conscious management decision to pull back and not be part of it. Because there is no stasis. There never has been. That looks like a Walt Disney movie. And so it's, it's something that we have to reconcile with, is that we are part of the ecosystem. We are part of the entire process. We are probably the only part that really thoughtfully considers what we want it to look like in 10 years and then tries to drive the car to get there. And that's not a bad thing, but we need to recognize that, and that intelligent management has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years in different roles, in different ways, sometimes with different goals, but it's really part of who we are. We're part of nature. We're, humans, we're animals too. We're part of this entire ecosystem and process, and we should embrace that, but embrace it in a positive way. And there's people that, that are scared of that because they take it almost, there was the Adamic, there's the biblical Adamic kind of view of it, of like man as a caretaker. And some people have kind of rejected that. But regardless of how you feel about religion, you shouldn't. It's a great opportunity for us to be part of the positive. If you look at it from the, positive universal standpoint, be positive, the part of the positive karma that makes the world a better place. And I think that we have to commit to that, because if we don't, there's nobody else that's going to, because Mother Nature doesn't care, but we can. So why shouldn't we?
So now that you say that, now I'm going to jump into the controversy, because it might make us sound a little bit hypocritical at some point, which I think is great. so here's,
might as well. It's
right?
Not the first time.
After we said all of that. So here's the deal, right? So I mentioned this Senate bill, this 140, the Wildfire Prevention Act of 2025. That's not the controversial bill. I told you it has a lot of bipartisan support. It's been broadly bipartisan. It appeared that there was actually a path at some point. I don't know when. Maybe it would have been this year, maybe a future Congress, but it was moving in the right direction. I would have thought at some point it would have passed, and maybe it still will. But I can tell you after today, I don't think it's going to pass, and it's in the form that you're going to see tomorrow.
I think you're probably right, Dave.
And that's because Senator Lee
touched it.
Touched it. Yeah. Yeah. A priority of his was to see the 2001 Roadless Rule repealed. So tomorrow there was an amendment filed today, and tomorrow there will be this markup, and they will be discussing this bill with the proposed amendments. And one of the amendments is to repeal,
rescind the 2001 Roadless Rule
with a couple of conditions. The Idaho and Colorado have their own roadless rules, and it would not impact those two roadless rules that were negotiated separately. It would be everything else. So it's largely meant to mirror the proposal that the federal government made, that the Forest Service made last year, to repeal or rescind the Roadless Rule. So it would just do it through congressional action. That is the thing that has really become controversial. And there are people, as we're talking right now, there are people trying to find ways to get that, make sure that that doesn't survive markup and that gets pulled from the bill. I don't know that that's going to be successful, but here's the deal. It is now, because of that, it has gone from a bipartisan bill to a hyperpartisan bill, which may get out of committee on markup. We'll find out tomorrow. Maybe it gets out of committee on, maybe it gets out of markup, or gets through the markup, maybe, and maybe that provision stays in with the Roadless Rule rescission.
Do you think that Senator Lee knows when he puts his name on stuff that it's just like a kiss of death?
Oh, he has to. At this point, I'm sure. This wasn't done with an intent of passing this bill.
No, this wasn't like, he's like, let me help. That wasn't his thought process. And this is like, let's get this baby across the finish line. That is not what this was.
There's some other motivation.
Again, I'm like, what do we,
there was some other motivation behind it. And
do you think he's mad at Barrasso? Do you think he's
I don't think
no, I'm just kidding. I don't want to delve into
too much
of that, but it is funny.
I just think
funny to me, I guess.
I just think it's been a priority. There have been a number of senators and representatives for decades now that have not liked the Roadless Rule and have wanted to see it be rescinded. Remember, after it was adopted in 2001, it was litigated for nearly a decade, by a number of Western states. It's not a thing that had huge bipartisan support at the time, and ever since it was at the time, there were a number of folks that felt like this was a huge federal overreach, and it was shutting down potential timber harvest and forest management and out off-road recreational ORV uses and all that sort of stuff, that it was just locking places up and throwing away the key. And
a bunch of that was very Utah centric. There's a lot of groups out of Utah involved in specifically the off-roading community because of the impact that it had on communities like Moab, Utah, where you had a lot of motorized recreation and a big economy built around that. And so it's kind of interesting, but it kind of mirrors some of the other, if you wonder why these controversies and why Utah's in the center of them, it has a lot to do with the huge percentage of public ground in Utah. And then the fact that Utah is a very recreation heavy state. And so like how those rules impacted the potential economic benefit of having access to those federal lands in the state of Utah. And that's why you see these things kind of repeat themselves in these repeating patterns in states like Utah.
Yeah. No, that's right. And you're seeing it in other Western states as well. But Utah has been an epicenter of this for 25 years now, right? And so there was an opportunity here. Perhaps Senator Lee didn't see a path for this bill to pass. So there was an opportunity to tack on something that he probably views as, look, if we're talking about reducing fire frequency and intensity and increasing active forest management, in his eyes, one way to do that is probably to not have the roadless rule and to have those 45 million acres available for prescribed fire, timber harvest of some sort, mechanical thinning. And so it gets back to what we were talking about before about this need to manage the forest. And this is where I'm personally going to become a hypocrite of sorts, which is I personally, because of the way I hunt and the things I like to hunt, I get great value out of having big blocks of roadless area. I think it provides refuge for large ungulates and incredible hunting opportunities, just incredible hunting opportunities. And I will say, in a lot of the places that I've been that are inventoried roadless, I don't know that you'd ever go in there and do any kind of timber harvest. Like, there's a reason why it hadn't been done before. There's a lot of gnarly, rugged country that's covered by that. But that's the fundamental debate, right? You've got one contingent of folks that has always hated the rule, has felt that it's locked people out, that it's prevented active management of tens of millions of acres of forest. And you have another cohort that says, I kind of like having places where there aren't roads. I think there are these places that the animals need to have where there aren't roads. And I see exceptional value in having roadless areas. And that's not to say, to be clear, they're in the roadless rule, the 2001 rule. There's not an absolute prohibition. There are limited exceptions for timber harvest and construction of roads, for public safety and fire mitigation, for example, and for maintaining specific forest health characteristics. So some of the work that S140 contemplates might actually be able to be done in some roadless areas.
Here's
I will
an
say
interesting question.
Yeah, go.
Because it's late at night, so my brain is wandering. Here's a question for you.
Sure.
What do you think it would take? Or what's the time frame? And I wonder if people have given thought to this. Is like, we have pre-Forest Service. We've been, the reason we have these fuel loads that we have is because we've managed and fought fires for
fire suppression.
Yeah,
we've made it or whatever it was called.
Yeah, we've made it a priority, right? So, how long do you think it would take? And the funny part is, socially, the answer is this: people wouldn't accept it. But what would happen if you did encase mankind in a cement box and just stood back and just said, "You know what we're gonna do? We're just gonna let it burn.
Just see what happens."
Yeah, just let it go. And, because the problem is we can't, it's protecting structures and for whatever we say, we get these fires, they kick up and there's always some level of suppression that we build in. And you wonder how many years it would take before you get back to a, pre-settlement era where, tribes, they did just burn it. They lit it in order to maintain spacing because that was good for game and things like that. But you wonder how long it would take. And of course, part of the challenge is of course it would ruin the timber resource, right? You wouldn't be able to utilize the timber as a renewable resource that you went in and harvested and economically used for benefit anymore because it would be too unpredictable. But I just wonder how long it would take if we really did just backed away from it for it to look like, we imagined that it would, for it to, just a curiosity.
I mean,
somebody's got a paper on this. Somebody's done this
yeah,
study.
I mean, I think, the answer is going to be, it depends, right, on what part of the country you're in and what your climatic conditions are like, how much precip you get, what your growing season is like. It's going to vary. I would say in the Intermountain West, it'll take a freaking long time. To me, it seems like it'll take a long, long time.
And it'll mess up a bunch of ski resorts. But hey,
maybe open up some more backcountry runs. I don't know, but I guess the last thing,
snowmobiling would be way better.
Yeah, maybe not. The last thing I'd mention on this before we move to the other topic,
okay,
is, well, maybe two things. So one is, this is different. We've talked about the Congressional Review Act before, and how when the Congressional Review Act is used to repeal regulations, it means that no administration can come back in and put in place a substantially similar rule. In this instance, there's none of that language in this bill. The language is simply, it repeals the 2001 rule if the bill were to pass, which means that would go away. It would not prevent a future administration from coming in and writing the same rule and calling it the 2029 Roadless Rule. Right? So that's a piece that I think is worth noting, which means the other piece that it means is that the process, the forest, it doesn't do anything to impact the process the Forest Service is going through right now on rescinding the Roadless Rule, except to say if this were to pass, they wouldn't have to finish the job because it would have just been done by Congress. And if they decided, no, we want to have a modified version, we don't want to rescind the whole rule, we want a modified Roadless Rule, they'd still be able to do that. So I'd mention that. And then the other piece I'd mention is, let's say, as a hypothetical, that this provision stays attached to S-140 and that it passes out of the Senate ENR committee and goes to the full Senate. I don't see a path to 60 votes. I just don't. So the fact that this provision is in there, I don't see a path to this bill actually passing. In fact,
do you think
the good pieces of the bill now have been hijacked by this provision, and so even the good, there's no path to passing the good pieces unless you somehow strip this language, or introduce a new bill.
Do you think that he just did it for us so we'd have something to talk about?
Something to talk about? Yeah, I don't know.
He did. Thank you, Mike.
Last year around this time, we were in a hair on fire moment, right? Remember, it was when Senator Lee was pushing to sell 3 million acres of public land. Yeah.
And we stopped that.
And
on gravel, wasn't even there.
What we did do is we tried to get a lot of information out as fast as possible. We were recording at all kinds of hours, jumping podcasts regularly. We were sounding alarm bells. We were saying this is a 5-alarm fire, right? And this is a real thing, a real threat that could actually happen, and your public lands could be sold. This is a real thing that could happen. The reason today, even though there are all these stories out there ringing these alarm bells and saying, the sky is falling, the reason I'm not sitting here tonight ringing alarm bells, even though I disagree with the approach that Senator Lee's taking here, I'm not ringing the alarm bells because I'm looking at this and saying, I don't actually see the path for this to pass. I don't see, even if there's a third reconciliation bill, there's no way to attach this to that bill because it's not a revenue type of bill. The only other path would be to attach it to something like an NDAA, defense authorization type of bill where you can get through with a 50 vote threshold. But this is the type of provision that likely gets stripped. I just don't think this piece passes, I guess, is if I'm putting my
No,
looking
I don't
into
think
the
this is
crystal
the type
ball.
of thing that you need to freak out about. But
You can be
that's
mad
okay
about it. You can be mad.
Yeah,
It's fine to be mad about it and say,
it's
why are we doing this?
philosophical. It's not actual. But again, maybe he didn't do it for us. Maybe he did it because he's secretly, maybe he's a member of BHA and he's trying to increase membership.
That'll do it.
Fundraising. I bet Ryan, did it. He did it for Ryan.
Maybe.
So
anyway, that's why
next?
That's why we'll go on to what's next. Yeah, we'll do what's next. Anyway, that's the scenario that you're dealing with on the roadless rule, or the Lee
I
amendment.
think one thing to note though, Lee did not. The amendment doesn't have his name on it. But
that is correct.
Make no mistake, it's his fault. It's not like whoever got suckered to put their stamp on this. It's not there. It's Lee.
Yeah, it's driven from Lee's office for sure.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So here's the second thing I want to talk about, and maybe we'll be even briefer on this. This is in the world of pendulum swings. Just wanted to bring it up because this will be we've probably talked about it every time it's happened. We've been doing this podcast long enough. This is the third time this has happened since we've been doing this podcast. This is a hard pivot to a different topic. We're talking endangered species at this point. In 1978, the Fish and Wildlife Service adopted a rule it's just been called the blanket 4D rule. And here's what it does in a nutshell. So under the Endangered Species Act, there are two categories of listings. You're listed as threatened or you're listed as endangered. There's a third status of warranted but precluded, but when you're listed, you have two listing statuses, threatened or endangered. You might hear about take prohibitions. You're not allowed to take, harass, harm, all that sort of stuff. That is specific in the act, specific to endangered species, not to threatened. Threatened and endangered, when you read the text of the act from 1973, actually meant two very different things. They had two different statuses. In 1978, the Fish and Wildlife Service adopts this rule, and it's just called the blanket 4D rule. Section 4, subsection D of the Endangered Species Act gives the service the authority to write these rules that aid in the conservation of the species. And it can, in a lot of times, you might hear them in the context of providing some regulatory flexibility. There's a 4D rule for grizzly bears that dates back 50 years now, something like that. And it creates some flexibility to say, if you kill a charging grizzly bear in self-defense, you're not going to be prosecuted for violating the Endangered Species Act, right? So it creates some flexibility. Anyway, the 78 rule applies this blanket 4D, which means blanket just meant any species that's listed at all. If it's listed as threatened, it's going to be treated as though it's listed as endangered for the take prohibitions piece. So once it's listed, no harming, harassing, killing, all that sort of stuff. Blanket across the board. And then you could come in later and tailor a 4D rule to a specific species and relax some of those take prohibitions. So in the instance of grizzly bear, you might allow the take in the case of self-defense. In the case of wolves, maybe you allow the take if they are harassing wildlife or killing livestock or something like that. So there's that flexibility. So that's the history of it. So what happened? Well, in the first Trump administration, the Fish and Wildlife Service wrote a rule to rescind that blanket 4D rule, basically saying every species that's listed will have to have its own species-specific 4D rule. We're not going to do a blanket rule anymore. Then fast forward to the Biden administration, and they reinstated the blanket 4D rule again. So we went back to the 1978 metric, and enter the next Trump administration here, and just learned that they're moving forward with a rule to, again, rescind the blanket 4D rule and go back to individual tailored 4D rules. Now, I don't want to bore everybody to tears, because Nephi, you look bored out of your mind right now. So I can only imagine what listeners.
Sorry.
Yeah, I can only imagine what listeners are thinking.
In my head, I'm thinking about intelligent things to say. Nothing.
Nothing's
happening upstairs.
Here's the thing I'm going to say, because this is, again, I just want to cut through all the hyperbole that's out there and talk about like what actually happens. So the hyperbole out there, the fear out there, the you have one group of folks saying this will be catastrophic for threatened species because they won't have this blanket 4D protection, and it means there'll be more of them killed, and they'll say the Fish and Wildlife Service doesn't have the resources to write a species specific 4D rule. Okay, they don't have the resources, which means there won't be any take prohibitions. They just won't be able to do it. There won't be any take prohibitions. The flip side of the argument is that they absolutely will, and not to worry, right? And I think it probably falls somewhere in between, because I hear one camp, and you'll hear it during the first Trump administration, after the 4D rule, the blanket 4D rule was rescinded. The administration was able to write species-specific 4D rules for every single species that was listed. So in that instance, the argument of like they don't have the resources, they can't do it, they'll never do it, the data doesn't bear that out. They did. Okay. But that was pre-Doge. And Fish and Wildlife Service staff is now down, 25, almost 30%, something like that. And the other thing is there's some politics to species listings, even though it's all supposed to be based on science. All you have to do is go back through history and see how many species are listed or not under different administrations. And, I'll just say under Democratic administrations, there are a lot more species listed than under Republican administrations. So theoretically, if it were a Democratic administration listing species, yeah, there might not be the resources to write species-specific 4D rules for all those species listed. But I'm just not convinced it's a sky is falling. Again, I'm not convinced it's a sky is falling scenario. But it's something that's out there that's probably worth mentioning. You might see something about it. And now I've just bored you all to tears on something I kind of like wonking out on.
Yes, you do like walking out on. But hey, I know. That's great. This was a good discussion. Glad we had that talk.
I just rambled on about.
Glad we had that talk. Nope.
Wasn't even. Do you have anything to add? Or
nothing.
You're like, nothing. Not a word.
Nothing at all.
You're like, just stop talking, Wilms. Let's move on.
There's nothing to move on to, man. It's late at night.
Yeah. That's all we got right now.
But it might be but hey, everybody, thank you so much. I would like to dedicate this podcast to Ryan Bronson. Start with Ryan.
End with Ryan. I'm representing his org right now, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation.
All I see is pixels.
Well, I'm just telling you what the hat says. RMEF, great organization.
Can you read my hat?
I can. I don't know what's wrong on your end. You might need to go get glasses or something.
I can read my hat on my end too. I just can't read your hat.
I can read, like I can see the vortex sign on your back wall. I can see isn't that like it was from some adventure race you did, the thing right above it?
Yeah, that's from the Sniper Adventure Challenge.
That's what it was. Sniper Adventure Challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a multi-day. It's a multi-day. It's like an adventure race for gun teams for like a for a sniper team. It's pretty fun.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, there's lots of stories with that, but people don't care to hear those stories because, yeah,
They're probably more interesting than the blanket 4D roll.
probably they are more interesting than me. But my teammate, that like actually the first time, like the story behind that, when I did that event, I'd always wanted to do that event, and my friend Scott, maybe I don't say his name, I don't know, because
You just did.
he was
You didn't say
I
last
said
name.
his first name.
Yeah.
So Scott, but he he wanted to go to do the same thing, but I knew he was in the military, but he actually didn't tell me what he used to do. And so I just knew he was just, he was like, he's like, oh yeah, I was an Army Ranger and some stuff like that. Well, turns out Scott used to be in an entity of the government that they don't admit exists. So it's a group that some people call combat operations, combat applications group. Some people call it Delta. Anyway, so he was my teammate, and we went and did this event. We did really well. I don't know if that's a big surprise when you have a guy like that as your teammate.
He carried you, is what you're saying?
Yeah, well, it's funny. We joke about it, because he didn't carry me, but he kind of like, just when you work with somebody like that, like, this event, only 5% of the people that have ever entered the Sniper Adventure Challenge, it's a competition dynamics event, have ever finished it. So we finished it. I finished it a couple of years in a row, actually. But Scott, you're not going to quit. If that guy's your teammate, the reason that he is where he is because he doesn't quit. And so that like there's no quitting. And so there's something positive to that, to having people around you. So this is maybe the take home, like your food for thought after the other stuff is like, make sure that you surround yourself with high quality people, because the reality is sometimes it doesn't matter what what area they're in or what their job is. As long as they are committed to excellence in their job, you're going to find that you have a lot in common. And when you surround yourself with those people, they bring out the best in you. And so that was a really fun thing. And yeah, we finished, I think that's 5th place out of about 50 international teams. And it was interesting. The one above that, that's a 3rd place from another, team competition. It was like shooting sports competition in the state of Utah. It was different teammate, my good buddy Cody. But,
all I hear you saying is that you're a 2-time loser.
Yeah, mediocrity, Dave, is what I pride myself on. Yeah,
5th place is just the 4th loser.
Yeah, I don't know that I have one. Interesting enough, I do have one 1st place trophy. It's up above my desk. It's a motocross race, and so
everybody else fell down.
Yeah,
I don't mean to jab you.
Which reminds me of another great story is that people who don't know, we had this. We worked for the governor when they were doing refurbishing the Capitol in the state of Wyoming. So they put $300+ million into making the Capitol beautiful.
I think I know what you're going to say.
They made us move during that time. Our offices went from the Capitol to a mortuary. And so there's this old mortuary where our offices ended up. And of course, it was refurbished and everything. And it was built in an old mansion. They turned an old mansion into a mortuary, but now we're in this mortuary and we're in the basement of the mortuary. And literally one of our colleagues has his office in what was the embalming room.
Yeah.
Right. And so we did not, I had my own office. Somehow you got stuck out in like the middle of like a cubicle, in like some hallway. Yeah. In the, in the basement of a mortuary. And so
there were like 5 of us that were stuck out in this open room.
They did it by seniority, right? And I'd been in the office longer.
Who'd been there the longest. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I had
not who was the most experienced professional, because that was the other thing, is there was somebody that had an office. Colin had that office.
Yeah.
And he was just a baby.
Yeah, Colin was
like his first job
for me. Yeah, before he was moved up, but it was pretty funny. And so Justice Gray, who we talked about before, was our chief of staff and took great pride, because this mortuary had historic value, in like picking all the artwork and making sure that everything was like had to be so with where it
I
was,
know
and
where
like
you're going now for sure.
approving. And so Dave makes a point of being the biggest pieces of crap personal items that he possibly can and putting them in his office just as a big middle finger to the world. So he has a broken coat rack
Yeah.
that he sets in his office so it hangs off to the
It's like
side.
at
It has
a
a coat on it.
40-degree angle when you put a coat on it.
That in it. And like these just random old like bowling trophies. He's just
I brought in
like
my basketball trophies from my teenage
from like
years.
8th grade, stuff like this, and like puts them all over his office. So his office just looks like you walk through the mortuary into the basement, and it's just like you walk into this space and you're like, it looks like you walked into a Salvation Army.
It wasn't much longer before I got my own office.
Yeah, and then they moved you. Oh man.
Yeah.
You fought that too, though, because like I insisted. I was like, I was in the basement with him. I was like, I'm moving upstairs. It's like, and so I like commandeered like this nice office. I was like, you're coming with me, Dave. Let's go. And you fought it
because I didn't want to be in eyesight. I didn't want to be in the direct.
Such a stubborn turd that I'm like, I'm getting you a good office. You're gonna be right next to me. We're right in we're right in the middle of the action, you know. You're like, no, I want to stay in the basement by the judge in the frickin' embalming room.
Well, I didn't want to be in the direct line of sight to Carrie because her office was direct line of sight from those two offices. And
which is probably why she put us there.
Because then she can just yell our names and we have to come do stuff, lots of stuff.
Yeah, we did have to do a lot of stuff.
Or we have to take the blame for something. Yeah, no, it was a great time. I'd forgotten about that office story. I'm glad you said that. Because I totally did that to give the middle finger.
Oh man.
Oh, good times. All right. On that note, I'm gonna call it. This is devolving quickly. Everybody, thanks so much for listening to. Hopefully, you got a laugh out of that last story. It made up for the 4D conversation, blanket rule conversation.
Your cowboy boots sometime too. We'll talk about
that. Could be the next. That could be the next thing, or my my rain gear at that point in time, or I was the butt of a lot of jokes around that time for my cheapness. I still am in a lot of ways. Thanks for listening, everybody. Really appreciate it. Reminder. Our email address is yourmountainpodcast@gmail.com. I have to stop every time before I say it and think about it because it is a little different than what our other email address was. So yourmountainpodcast@gmail.com. Find us on social media if you want to hit us up with a direct message on Instagram and Facebook in particular at the handle @itsyourmountain. Go to YouTube. Follow us there. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll try and do more stuff there now that we're doing this video stuff more regularly. We're there. So go find us on YouTube. And as always, remember, life is about experiences. So go have one.